Peter anyway, so that I'm not really going to do a lot of introductions. So, whenever Peter's ready, we'll start. Well, we got time.
Well, I was saying hello to my Andover friends, who I kind of feared wouldn't be here because of the rain, but I'm going to try not to touch that. There. Ooh, because last time I spoke here, I made a lot of noise, so I'm going to stand and deliver tonight. Hi, welcome to Michigan.
Yeah.
Some good Michigan white birch. Beautiful. There's only one thing wrong with it. It's not Maine white birch. And it didn't make very good spool wood. So Michigan never became a spool mill capital. Only Maine did. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the history of spools, why we have spools. And Napoleon comes into this, and a few other people. And then I'm going to talk about a listing of a lot of the mills in Oxford and Franklin and Androscoggin counties. And I'm going to pretty much skip over Androscoggin and Franklin counties and concentrate on Oxford. And when Oxford comes up, feel free to ask as many questions or make as many comments as you want to. I bored everybody last night or 2 nights ago in West Paris because I didn't ask for questions. Tonight, just speak up. And we might not get through all the slides, but what the hell, we're going to have a good time. Can we dust some lights? I can get this one. I am very light sensitive, so I always tend to wear a hat. Okay, what you're about to see is a work in progress. You won't see much information on sawmills or birch mills or clothespin mills or novelty mills, just spool mills. Another presentation on toothpick mills is in the works. And somewhere there's a jar, it looks like a picture back there, and if you haven't donated to the Woodstock Historical Society, please do. Right there, I'm going to be watching. And then thanks to Jan Stowell and historical societies in Andover, Bethel, Dixfield, Gilead, Greenwood, Woodstock, and South Paris. Where's that? Right there. Okay. And to Ann Palmer Curtis for her hours of researching newspaper archives. The last time I got a report from her was 4 o'clock this afternoon. Asking me if I got this, asking me if I got that. What about this, or what about this owner of this mill in Bethel? Did you get that? Yes, thank you. Yeah. She's probably sent me 1,000 articles so far. So, these are spools. Spools on the left, all kinds of them. And they were all made in Oxford County, in one form or another, depending on the orders, depending on the thread, whether it was wool or linen or cotton or silk. And on the right, bobbins. And a lot of spool mills also made bobbins. And they made bobbins sometimes even going out of the spool mill business to do it, because there wasn't much profit in spools. And it was kind of a cutthroat business. And the bobbins are beautiful. Okay. We can trace Maine spool mills all the way back to Kashmir, which is, if you've been watching the news, it's India and Kashmir are having problems right now between the Hindus and the Muslims. Well, that's where the Kashmir shawl was created in the 1700s. And it was very costly, but much in demand. And it was made by hand. As you can see, it's being decorated by hand. Well, enter the jacquard loom, 1804, which allowed fabrics to be woven cheaply. This led to knockoff cashmere shawls, and then to the Paisley shawl in Paisley, Scotland, wildly popular at first, but it soon fell out of favor, causing massive layoffs. That's what happens when everybody gets the same sweater or shirt or whatever. Nobody wants them anymore. So what happens when you have layoffs and nobody wants your product? Labor rates fall. Labor became cheap in Paisley. And then fabric seller James Clark wound thread on Robert Paul's lathe-made spools. And Robert Paul made these at home. And the buyer paid a small deposit for each spool of thread. The idea caught on. So with the decline of the Paisley shawl, the availability of cheap labor, and Clark's clever idea, the spool industry was born. About 1805, 1810. Oh, and that jacquard loom that I mentioned before, it was run on punch cards, much like the old IBM computers. They were ahead of their time. And this is a picture of the Clark Company mills in Paisley, Scotland. And somewhere there's a spool mill there. And they got their spool wood from Finland, mostly. Later, the J.P. Coates Company was also founded in Scotland, creating competition for labor, cotton, and spools. So the James Clark Company set up a factory in New Jersey, and the Coates Company followed suit in Rhode Island. And this is the Coates Company. Somewhere there's a spool mill there. To thwart Great Britain's mills, Francis Napoleon Bonaparte seized control of Europe's silk industry, most of which was in Germany. Without silk, no silk thread for spools. England beseeched the Paisley companies to invent thread from cotton, so they did. And cotton soon replaced silk. And Napoleon went off to sulk somewhere, a little place called Elba. Spools were originally made in Rhode Island and New Jersey, but they were later erected in Maine. First one is 1848, and the last one may be 1970 maybe. Other states entered the spool business too, but Maine's birch was preferred. And this is an old spool mill at Freedom Falls, Maine. You think they'd dismantle it, take it down. It's been completely rehabilitated, and it now houses boutique restaurants and so forth. I haven't been over there yet, but I'm going to. And they're only open for supper, and they...
Where is it?
And
Where
by
is
appointment.
Freedom Falls?
Pardon?
Peter, where is Freedom Falls? Whereabouts in Maine?
In Freedom.
Where's Freedom?
It's out where Kennebec County and Waldo County surround together, about in that area.
Okay. Right.
But just a guess.
Thank you.
And white birch was the wood of choice for spools, toothpicks, and many novelties. Why? White birch was cheap, durable, plentiful, workable, it dried well, it didn't stain, stink, or absorb color easily. Now you see some white birch here, some planks. I wouldn't use them to make spools with. You see they've got a lot of red heart. That has to be all cut out and thrown away, and it's all through the wood. And it's got a lot of stain, which tells you the wood was probably cut in the summertime, once the sap had gotten into it. So most of the wood in Maine for spools was cut between December and May. And it was cut by farmers who were looking for something to do in the wintertime. So they cut the birch on their woodlot and trucked it to the mill. In some cases, they ran their own sawmills and trucked the squares to the mills. This is a 1946 George French photo showing birch bolts entering a mill in New Portland. This could have been one of my great-grandfather's mills, I don't know. But I think that birch is maybe white birch, yellow birch and not white birch, because look at all the heart there. And the same with that piece. It's not white, it's red. So they're not using that for spool wood, they have another order or something. But that tells you how it was made, and it goes into the mill, goes up a little chain, and gets cut into planks, sent down to the pony bolter. Pony bolter cuts what it can, throws the plank over to the gang stripper. Gang stripper runs them through. If there's anything left over, they toss it over to the single stripper, and they get one more square out of it. I know, I used to do that.
That sounds good.
And 4-foot bolts were sawed in a mill to a number of dimensions depending on business owners. They were then taken to a drying area to cure for several months. And these are white birch squares air drying at Stowell, McGregor, and Dixfield. And this is a work of art. These piles are works of art. You can see there's no vegetation growing. They're 2 feet off the ground, so when it rains and the rain drips down into the mud, it doesn't splash up on the wood. The wood remains white. And it's covered so the rain doesn't get on the piles of wood, and they've got cribbed little roofs, held down generally with sheet metal and pieces of junk wood. That's what they did with a lot of the waste wood from the mills. So that's just a work of art. Just beautiful. And the one next door the same way. When I used to work in a yard, the one in Bryant Pond, right over here. My brother Mike did too. And we did the same thing.
Yes, we did.
They would just, it was artful putting those things together. It was wonderful. All right, the distribution of spool mills in Maine by county in 1848 to 1975. And you can see that Oxford and Franklin and Androscoggin County were home to 130 of the 180 spool mills in Maine. And Oxford had 68, Franklin 39, and there's Androscoggin 23. And those numbers are rough and they will change just today. And you'll see it. I put a slide in the show where there was a new spool mill I'd never known of before, and I still don't believe it existed, so we'll see. And 3 counties, Aroostook, Lincoln, and Knox, had no spool mills, and Little Saginaw down there had 1. And western Maine, 3 counties, Franklin, Oxford, and Androscoggin, and these are the ones I'm going to be talking about.
You know, I suppose that was because that was where most of the white birch was.
Yes, good point. Is this where most of the white birch was? Yes, it was here. It was in Washington County, and it was up in Piscataquis County and Franklin County. And the reason it was in those counties and not elsewhere in Maine, fire. You can't have birch without fire. And Maine burned, western Maine burned in 1818. 2 years after the winter without a summer, the year without a summer, and 1825 to 1837, there were lots of fires. And then birch comes in and grows just in time to be harvested 40, 50 years later for the birch mills. And then you can get a succession crop or 2. But right now in Maine, you don't see much birch, do you? No. It's gone. Oh, I won't say what I was tempted to say, but don't start any fires, please, to get them back, because it's probably gone unless the demand for birch comes back and somebody cultivates them. But if they do cultivate them, the price will skyrocket. So it's got to be a unique use. Because previously, it was a wood that you just threw out. You couldn't use it for anything. You couldn't even use it to heat your house.
Did the ice storm take out a lot of birch too? The ice storm.
Didn't the ice?
Yes, the ice storm takes out a lot of trees too, bends them over, and they never rise up again. And insects, once they get old, the red heart in them expands geometrically, so that they're useless. They don't get cut down; they just die. And so, harvesting birch was an art. And my great-grandfather, thinking that the state was going to run out of birch, because you not only had spools, you had toothpicks, you had novelties, you had everything using birch. Starting about 1898, he went out and started buying lots of birch, woodlots. My story is that when he'd read the paper and he sees that a gentleman had died anywhere in these 3 counties, then he'd make a phone call to the widow and a visit. He'd bring some wine, a card, sympathy, a shoulder to cry on. And he'd wind up with a woodlot. I think I'm exaggerating a little bit, but you get the point. He was right there. So by 1932, once he was scolded by the Coates Thread Company for not putting his wood into a trust, and they wanted him to do that so they could have the wood forever, he could have the land, they wanted to buy the wood. which was neat. He had the land, he could sell the wood, and he could sell it to Coates and Clark, and then he could turn it into spools and charge them for the spools. He had a little racket going. And at the end, when he retired in 1932, he had 256 parcels of land all over Maine, totaling 90,000 acres. So he was of the opinion, as many people were, that the supply of birch would not last forever. So he'd better corner the market. In fact, I think that that's one of the reasons that the Foster Toothpick Company left Dixfield, because there was too much competition from the spool mills. And it was an good old boys club in Dixfield with the Stowells and the Harlows and the Stanleys that they couldn't buy woodlots. The little spool mill cabal had a monopoly on it, so Foster went up to strong. So it worked out for everybody. Anyway, these are some of the spool mills in Androscoggin County. It used to be all of them, but then I just counted last night and I said, oh, there are more than that. I forgot to put them on. So that's just some of the spool mills. And this was the first one, 1848 in Berryville. Beautiful downtown Berryville. Anybody ever been there? I don't have a clue as to where it is. Well, actually I do. I have a couple clues. And the clue is that it's 3 miles from downtown Lewiston. And it could be towards, not Sabattis, the other way. Towards Green, on 201. But I don't know, and I can't find anybody that can confirm that. And I've had people who have listings of all the historical post office in the country, and that never shows up. So, my next theory is, well, here's another 1848, that somehow those were the same. Don't know. But that's the best I can tell you.
Why do you think Berryville is going toward green? What leads you to believe that?
Oh, it's where Martin's is.
Okay. So
Just exactly where Martin's is.
okay. What's your reference for that? I mean, what?
It was in the article in the 1848.
Okay, that said it's
3 miles from downtown. Because
Okay.
the author said, who would think that just 3 miles from
Yeah.
where I am was the implication,
Interesting.
and I assume it was the Lewiston paper that would put it up towards,
Yep.
I
Out
can't remember the name of the brook, but it's Bog Brook or something like that.
It's
that
out on
comes in.
202.
Yep.
Kind of, yeah.
And what's the name of the motorcycle company?
It used to be Shot, but now it's L.A. Harley.
Yeah, Harley's.
Yeah,
Just it was right in that area. Okay, and then that's it. I'm not going to talk about these. When I say NE stands for New England Business Directory, that's one of my sources, and MR's Main Register. And I've got a few other shorthand things that if I don't tell you what it is, ask me. So anyway, that's pretty much Androscoggin County. We're done with them. Okay, Parker, Spool, and Bobbin came into Lewiston in 1908. They came in from Lowell, and they came into this building here, which I suspect was already in existence when they moved up, and I suspect that because of the chimney there and there, because they didn't make chimneys like that in 1908. This part of the building here is gone, but this part of the building here is there. And there's the smokestack, and this part has been filled in. And it was a family-owned mill. They employed anywhere, I've seen estimates 240 to 360. And here are two that I happened to discover last week, or 2 weeks ago, on my way to a presentation over in Lovell. I stopped into Paz Antiques on Route 26 in Oxford to go through their letterheads one more time. It'd be the third time I've gone through them. And I saw that and I went, don't they ever stop? And it was the first indication that I'd seen that bobbin's there. And then the American Bobbin Company, I said, well, I haven't seen that one before, so okay, I gotta buy that. And then there was one more in West Paris that I found. It was like, what? Hannibal Brown made bobbins in West Paris? Yep. And chairs. Okay, Spool Mills in Franklin County. Jenkins and Bogart was a real early one in Carabasset. They moved later into Kingfield and Carabasset. Who knows what Carabasset is? Carabasset was an Indian brave from the cannabis tribe on the Kennebec River. He's a very well-known Indian. And then there was Cushman in Chesterville. I know nothing about it. B.F. Morrill. I came across the Stitchfield mill. I suspect is the same as the Morrill mill. Just today, I was looking for spool-related stuff from the old Stowell archives, and I found an 1970 edition of the sesquicentennial of Franklin County. And in it was a picture of the George Stitchfield mill. So, okay, got another one. There aren't many pictures of these mills. They're gone. And especially in Androscoggin County, very few. And do you know why? What was the big industry in Androscoggin County?
Bedspreads and shoes.
And wool. Fabrics. So that's where all your pictures are. And these little piddling little spool mills, they didn't care about them. And I can't find any mentions in any of the histories of that area. It's just an occasional mention in an article here and there.
The Franklin Mill in Freeman, the starboard corner.
Which one was that? This one?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that might be starboard corner. There are pictures of that.
There's a picture of that?
There are pictures of
Well,
the starboard mill.
see me afterwards and let me know, because I'm looking for them. And in fact, most of the pictures of mills, Oxford County. And then all the mills in Oxford County, but the ones that we've all heard about. So that's, when we get to those, you'll see. And then, okay. More in Franklin County, Ford, Kingfield, Jenkins and Bogart, H.G. Winder. R.A. Hughes is interesting because he started in Sumner, Maine, and moved up to Farmington, put a mill in up there, and then the town wanted it to put in electricity, so they bought it. He moved up to Madrid and put a spool mill in Madrid, and then closed that one, put one in Carabasset, and moved that one into Kingfield. So just as a person, he's quite interesting.
Didn't Jenkins and Bogart have, one of them had the mill up in Stratton? Jenkins and Bogart, one of them had the mill up in Stratton.
I'm guessing it would be Bogart.
Yeah.
But they were out of New York.
They were.
That was a New York name, yeah. Along with, do I have it in there, Estes? I guess it's in the previous one. I'm going to show it to you. Show it to you, this one. E.B. Estes and Son. I don't really know what they made for products, but they could have made spools or bobbins or whatever. They were in Farmington, but they were also in Madrid, they were also in Berwick, they were also in New Hampshire, they were also in Vermont and Massachusetts and New York and Pennsylvania. And their headquarters were in New York City. So they were probably the biggest novelty mills in the world by far. And you can go on Google Images. You know how to get there? Just go to Google and type in images, and then images.google comes up, and type in what you're looking for. And type in E.B. Estes, all kinds of their ads come up. All kinds of them. But I didn't concentrate on them. I'm going to later, if I can establish that they made spools. Here's North New Portland. Chase Hewitt and Company, 1931. I think that was Hewitt's second spool mill, because his first one, I think, was bought earlier by N.S. Stowell, and I think it burned in 1928.
Right.
I'm not sure. And they're asking for some of their land to be put into state forest, the equivalent of what do you call it?
Tree growth.
Woodlot program now.
Tree growth.
And there's H.G. Winter's letterhead, successors to Jenkins and Bogart, established 1885. Nice letterhead. Look at that. It's got his novelties up there. I don't see any spools. This is a 1940s view of the Wing Spool and Bobbin Company in Kingfield. I showed this Monday night in West Paris, and the Sanborn driver says, "Oh yes, that's the mill. I remember it well."
He came from Turner.
And this is the 1890s view of Jenkins and Bogart Spool Mill. Most of the mill is out of sight. You can see some of it here, the wood yards here, the piles of wood, and the kiln-dried wood here. I mean the air-dried wood in the sheds. Around 1890, the Carabasset River runs right through there. And the Austin and Sanborn mill and well was opened in 1869, and Harry Austin's father, and I'm sorry I can't remember his name, had been associated with the David Golder Spool Mill in Belgrade, erected in 1852. The elder Austin had been a partner with Golder. So Harry came by his knowledge of spool industry legitimately. But then once he started that in 69, he was an ambitious man. He sold his mill in 1895, opened a new mill in Phillips. And in 1906, Anna Stowell bought the Weld Mill, moving its machines to Dixfield. And then George Walters, who had his novelty mills in Dixfield, moved them to Weld. They just swapped, just to make it more efficient for the spool end of business. And that's a picture of it. And it had other names too. It could have been the Brown Mill. I don't know. But there was another spool mill in Weld with the name of Brown. And this is Harry Austin. He's chairman of the Maine Fish and Game Commission. His daughter was Ruth. Did she marry Anna Stowell? I think so. Mike? Did Anna Stowell marry Ruth Austin?
Yes.
Would have been his daughter.
Second or third wife.
Right, third.
Second wife.
Second? Okay. Yeah, second. And, okay. And then in the early 20th century, Austin erected the International Manufacturing Company in Phillips to make spools, toothpicks, and matches. Now, he was also on the Railroad Commission. He was on the Railroad Commission for a single reason, and that was to get the railroad to run by his mill. And there it is. You can't see it, but it's right there. Smart boy. His brother was, I think, governor of Michigan. I think. And this is the B.F. Morrow Mill. Morrow, as it's here. This is on the Farmington Falls, and this is Chesterville over here. And this is the Morrow Mill, and it's really early, 1876. And it's on Sanborn insurance maps. You know what Sanborn insurance maps are? No.
They're good.
Okay, back in the day, you know? Okay, back in the day, when mills needed to be insured, the insurance companies needed a way to find out whether they were worthy of being insured. So the Sanborn people, and Prentice, it was Prentice and Sanborn, went around to all these places and drew up plans like this and said, Thomas Williams saw a plating mill, no watchman, I can't quite read that, something. Johnson pumps, heat stores, light, kerosene, those kinds of things. And most of these places were lit by kerosene, and so the insurance rates went up because they had all of this dust. And I'll show you a picture later that they were just wallowing in shavings and dust and all kinds of stuff. So these are Sanborn maps, and they're available through the Library of Congress, free. You used to have to pay for them, but the Library of Congress made them available for nothing, and there are dozens and dozens and dozens of them. You can find them for Anna Stowell in Bethel, Stowell Spool Company in Woodstock, and just all kinds of them, and all over the state, all over the country.
Another company put out insurance maps about that same time.
Another company did? You remember the name?
I can't write off, but we have one or two local ones.
Yeah. Think of it, because maybe those are available too online somewhere. I'll put my research assistant on it.
Good.
Oh, and then we get to Oxford County. This just goes on forever. So the ones in yellow are the ones I'm going to talk about. Okay? So, and maybe I'll throw in a couple more, but there are just so many. The Albany and Andover and Bethel. Bethel had 15 spool mills that I could document. In fact, the mill that I discovered today and didn't know it existed was in Bethel, so that would make 16. And Merrill and Springer had a spool mill in West Bethel, and another one in Bethel, and R.J. Virgin and Hiram Hodgson had mills and Walker's Mills, and I'm now pretty much convinced that Hodgson came before Virgin. I don't really know that. And then I can find several references to an unknown mill in Easton Bethel running off Fishbrook. And nobody knows where Fishbrook is, but I can find, let's say, 6 references to it, and one of them said it was in the eastern part of town. So that's my clue. So it was running off those mills that you can see from, those mountains that you can see from Eden Ridge off to the left. They're on the other side of those mountains. So there's some streams coming down into the Androscoggin. So, and I'm positive one of them back in the day was known as Fish Brook or Fish River. But Bethel Historical Society's never heard of it, so. But that doesn't mean anything. That doesn't mean just, because I'm kind of used now to telling Bethel Historical Society about stuff that they don't know about, because they just haven't put the resources into finding it. So, and then you have the Tibbetts Mill in Greenwood. Did I say that? Oh, Dearborn and Tibbetts in Greenwood. And I didn't put in the original name of that mill. It was Dearborn and Block.
Lock everything into that one?
No, it wasn't Lock. I'll think of it. It was his partner out of Portsmouth, New Hampshire, that came to Maine with him. And he and his partner created a lot of problems for the other partner, Tibbetts. And so when the mills burned, they dissolved the partnership. Brownell, that was his name, Brownell. So it was Tibbetts and Brownell. Then Tibbetts Manufacturing came in about 1880, and it burned in 1891. Again, it also burned in 1879. And then E.L. Tibbetts came in. It was the same mill as above, and it changed names about 1906, I think, after John Tibbetts died. John Tibbetts was the founder. There's an unknown mill in Hebron, circa 1930 on the Bend Stone Road, and it's documented by oral tradition, and I'm convinced that it was there. I've taken a picture of it, but I just took that out of the show last night because there's not much to see. But I've talked with the former owner who was talking about the spools that she found on the property. And Barnes Walker was out of Lowell into Lovell, and it was the person's name, first and last name, Barnes Walker. And Lovell had 9 or 10, and they were all in the 1870s and just kind of died out. It was just a place that, probably because there was no railroad there, it was hard to get their product to market. So, and fire took a lot of them. There was one that, maybe it wasn't in Lovell, maybe it was Freiburg. Ooh, I didn't put in Freiburg, so there's another one. Freiburg, a man by the name of Barrows put in a mill in 1881, and it burned in 1882, and that was the last of it. So, okay. This is H.S. Brown. This is Harry Brown. There's another Harry Brown. And this is Hannibal Brown. And then you had the Dearborn Spool Company in Woodstock, came in 1880, exploded in 1884. And following Dearborn's death in 1906, it was bought by J.A. Thurston, and yet his family says they never made spools. So, but then again, I have relatives that I asked if they just a couple of weeks ago if their father made spools in Andover. One said no, and one said yes. The one that said yes is right. So people don't always know. And this is the Elliott and Bartlett Spool Mill Complex in Albany, Maine, the Leitchville section, near the famous signpost. This is going to North Waterford, Bethel's this way, and Waterford is this way. And the signpost would be right about here. And this is the man that got it going, Honorable John Lynch, 4 times a member of Congress, founder of Lynchville and the Crooked River, and owner of the Elliott Bartlett Spool Mill building. He only owned the building. Elliott and Bartlett owned the equipment and the product. And this is a pretty common arrangement. He came from Portland. The money was in Portland. And the railroad had come through the Androscoggin River all the way up to Berlin. This man, John Lynch, was all over it. All over it. He owned the Lewiston Steam Mill, the Bethel Steam Mill. He owned this factory and many, many more pieces of property. He was a financier, even though technically he was a store merchant. But he snowballed all of that into major businesses. He's one of my semi-heroes. I haven't found much to disparage him with yet. Nor, there's one guy, I'll come to him later. Now I'll talk about him now. His name is Alfred Garish, and he put up the steam mill. Don't tell the people in Bethel. Let's put it up in 1855. They think it was 1863, but it's 1855. And then a couple of years later, he moved to Gorham, New Hampshire, and then he muscled in on the development of the Brown Company, back when it was called Berlin Mills. First it was Winslow Mills, and then Berlin Mills, and then the Brown Company. And he got into providing lumber out of Bethel for the Crooker shipyard in Bath. And he's mentioned several times in a book. This is where my skepticism comes in. The name of the book is Ships, Swindlers, and Roast Pig, or something like that. So I haven't got the book yet, but I don't have high hopes for Mr. Garish. And when this Elliott and Bartlett letter was written from Andover, Maine in 1920, the mill was operated by Mr. Kilgore and Mr. Bartlett. And Kilgore was a son-in-law of the original founder, Hiram Elliott, and Charles Bartlett was a son of Jonathan Bartlett, his partner. The mill was purchased by J&P Coates in 1921, just found that out maybe a week ago, and soon became known as Stowell Manufacturing Company. The reason Stowell shows up a lot is that it just does. I mean, they were everywhere. They just bought everything. So I didn't want this to be a family affair, but then when I put it together, it says, I can't leave them out. I mean, they get all of the stuff, and the more I looked, the more they did. So here they are. And this is the mill as it looked about 1918, 1920. And I originally thought that Elliott and Bartlett in Andover took the place of the Andover Manufacturing Company, which I could find making wood products in Andover in the 1890s. But no, I come across an article in one of the papers that Palmer sent me, my researcher, that said they built in Andover, Maine. Oh, I didn't know that. So, okay, so they built on that spot. And this is the way it looked several years later when it was Stowell Manufacturing Company, 1945. And this is the product out there. This is the raw product, the birch he's got coming into the mill. This is more birch, this is more birch, and there's probably birch out in here. This is the horse shed where Old Dobbin was stalled. Was it Rocket? Was Rocket the horse?
White horse, yeah.
Right there, yep. And that's probably one of my uncles walking to work. Warren Percival, maybe?
It looks like him, actually, the way he's...
Yeah, it's kind of tilted like it.
Yeah, kind of stooped a little bit.
Those buildings on the right, that's why they kept the squares on the cover.
Right.
As an 11-year-old, I used to stick squares 4 hours a day there.
Wow.
Child labor.
Child labor, bring it back. Okay, there's something very unique in this picture. I wonder if you can spot it. Very unique, very special, historical even. You ready? Giving up?
The kiln dryer?
Look between the steam and the smoke. What do you see there?
Blower system.
A ski jump.
Oh, ski jump.
You see the blower system in the background is a ski jump on Bemis Hill. Mike is going, Right
It's
there.
in the water tank.
Hmm?
I don't see the water tank, can you see it?
Oh, it might not have been there at that time,
That's 45, you said?
or it could be behind here.
Could be behind
Could
the
be
screen.
because we used to climb that and run around the top, yeah.
One of the casualties of World War I was Frances Bartlett. She was the daughter of the mill owner. And once she died, he sent this picture to the Red Cross magazine with a notation, "I am sending a picture of our daughter, our soldier girl, who made the supreme sacrifice in Vichy, France."
Isn't that nice?
And she was a Red Cross nurse, and she died on October 16th, 1918. And you can Google that Red Cross magazine and Frances Bartlett, and the issue will come up. Now, we're in West Bethel. Many people remember the old Newton and Tibbet School Mill in West Bethel. The Adams Morrill Company, or Morrill Adams Company, was its predecessor. Isaac Morrill of Bethel had 2 spool mills, including this one. I actually think now he had 3. One down below the Bethel Inn, one in North Bethel, and this one in West Bethel. This may also have been operated by George L. Merrill, originally of Searsport, but after 1887, he was a spool mill manager in Oxford County. He is probably the driving force behind spool mill development in Oxford County. I'll say more about it. I'm going to say it right now. Okay, he and his father founded the Searsport Spool and Block Company in 1872. In 1886, he began talks with Dixfield's Frank Stanley to move the mill's machinery and employees to Oxford County. This is looking south, and this is Mechanics Hollow. This is the Searsport Block and Spool Company. Eventually, once they closed it, it became the something Pike Spool Company, and then there was another spool company put up beside it. So I can assign 3 spool mills to Searsport. Merrill's Searsport mill had run out of a handy birch supply. 6 spool machines and 13 families made the move to western Maine. One of them would start the Dixfield Fire Department, and another would invent a steam engine. And these were the names of some of them. Smith Varney, this is an anecdote, I might not get it right. It sounds like Smith Barney?
Right.
No, Smith Varney was a millwright from Searsport. And the Searsport people, when they came into Dixfield, kind of had to prove their worth. And there was a big engineering problem of erecting the smokestack. And Smith Varney said, and this is where the reputation of the Searsport people came in, he said, "You give me a couple good men willing to work and I'll have that up for you." And the crowd split, and he got his 2 men and he erected it. So he lent a lot of credibility to the out-of-towners. Charles Ames was the one that started the fire department, and he was chief for 30 years or more. This is one of my prized possessions, a Searsport Spool and Block Manufacturing Company share certificate, 1878. And this is their business card, which is pretty bad shape when I got it, but I photoshopped it and got it back. Oh, these pictures, by the way, I would say each picture you're looking at, I've spent at least an hour restoring them. You know how dirty these old pictures are sometimes? I take that dirty sky, I just erase it so that you can concentrate what's in the picture rather than all the dirt that's in the picture. And sometimes it takes hours to do this, and I say, I really shouldn't be doing this. I really should be writing my slideshow. I really shouldn't be doing this. But I love to do this, so I guess it's okay. This is spool mill number 1, opened in November 1887. It was called the Stanley Mill, after Frank Stanley, who built it. And George Merrill was installed as manager and lived in Stanley's large house on Wells Street that burned about 6 or 8 years ago. Beautiful, beautiful house. And this mill was on 3rd Street, which was constructed just for the mill. And this is another prized possession. This is dated June 23rd, 1888, 9 months after they were opened, actually 8 months after they opened. And it's kind of startling to see that John F. Stanley was president. John F. Stanley was Frank Stanley's brother. Frank was clearly the driving force behind the mill. And John, they should have switched roles, because John was better as a treasurer than he was as president. He should have been president. And George L. Merrill as business manager? No, he would have been a lousy business manager. He was a great mill supervisor. He knew how to run it. And eventually he took over that role of running the mill. And he bowed out and became county attorney in South Paris. And his family married into Jocelyn from South Portland. Anyway, and a spin-off, and then A.G. Reynolds is Frank Stanley's brother-in-law, and is J.F. Stanley, his brother, is on the board. And I don't know A.W. Merrill. He could be George Merrill's relative of some sort. He just pops into the picture, and I haven't been able to research him. And down here, we have a business that was located in Spool Mills, Maine. They were over working with the Tibbetts Company. Okay, then they moved to Dixfield. Why? Well, Tucker came from Dixfield. So he was moving back home, and he made automatic variety lathes. Now, that's not to say that he took care of the machine needs of the spool mills. He didn't. Most of that was done by the J.F. Penny Company of Mechanic Falls. And I need to put a J.F. Penny letterhead in the show because it's spectacular. And Penny was just a good old guy that got to fooling around with machines and fixing them up for the mills. And the next thing you know, everybody was coming to him for business, and he put in this gigantic operation to make machinery. And I'm sure that all the mills in Oxford County did their business with him. And when he died, or his children died, all of his papers went up for auction, and most of them are at Paz down in Oxford. Some of them show up on eBay from time to time, and it's consistent sellers that have them. So people bid on lots of them, LOTS, lots, and I get some off eBay, but I've gotten probably 150 out of Paz. It's like, man, it's like being in a candy shop when I go there. I can find this stuff. It's like, oh, I know who this guy is. That's Marcellus Tucker from Dixfield. And if you look on the new bridge, looking from Peru into Mexico, you cross that beautiful new bridge, and you look up on the hill, there's a nice, beautiful house up there. That's where Marcellus Tucker lived. And I have found an old picture of that house, and made his daughter, the daughter of the new owner, aware of it, and she commissioned me to do a Photoshop restoration of a picture that I had of the house, and she gave it to him for Christmas, and then was kind enough to take a picture of him looking at it and send it to me. It was like, oh my God. Yeah, it was like he was in heaven. So, and I've asked her to ask him to metal detect around there, see if they can find machine parts. Oh, this is the working conditions in the spool mill number 1. This is a ticket for the Coates Company, and the date is on the back. It's 1908 from N.S. Stowell. I just got this off eBay this week. And this man here is George Thompson. He ran this mill in Dixfield in the early 1900s, and when N.S. Stowell came over to Bethel in 1919, he brought him to Bethel to run the N.S. Stowell Company in Bethel. And these are the tumblers where the finished spools go in to get roughed off and polished and so forth. And this man here is Treat Howard, identified by one of his descendants. And I don't know these two men here. I do know that that's an awful mess to be walking in. And it's lit by kerosene, and the men were smokers. I'm sure there were rules you couldn't smoke in the mill, but still. And then up here, just a little bit of whimsy. You can't really make them out, but I can tell you because I've blown this picture up so that little piece is as big as that whole big piece here. That's a pair of shoes.
A pair of shoes, yeah.
Why they would have a pair of shoes, I don't know, but maybe somebody wore boots to keep the shavings out of their socks or something like that, and at the end of the day they went back into their shoes. I don't know. Funny. And this is spool mill number 2 in Dixfield on Mill Street, again, which was put in just for the mill. And Mill Street comes into 3rd Street at a right angle. One comes in from Wells Street, one comes in from Main Street. This was opened in 1891, but both mills became part of the American Bob and Spool and Shuttle Company, a Maine chartered company based in Boston. And it lasted about a year, but it took 18 Maine spool mills that were part of the consortium and plunged them into chaos for the next 10 years, trying to get them out of bankruptcy and back into production and so forth. Some came right out, 18 months. This one, I think, took 5 years to get it out, and some took 10. So anyway, and nobody really lost their job because the mills were making money. They just weren't the consortium wasn't making money because it didn't know how to manage itself. So then Merrill, who has been running this one and Spool Mill number 1, he went over, they assigned him, ABSS assigned him to manage the Tibbetts Mill and lots of mills. And then because the steam mill was having problems, they sent him over to the steam mill, and he lived in Bethel for a while. And Frank Stanley was kind of disgusted with everything and moved up to Roxbury and became a railroad agent, a Western Union agent. And then after his mother died in 1896, he moved to Kingfield and ran a spool mill up there, ran for the legislature and won. His brother died in Dixfield, 1913. He came back to Dixfield, ran for the legislature and won. He's one of my all-time favorite people. Happens to be an uncle too. Anyway, this is some of their stationery. Kilby Street in Boston. The fire at our factory, New Bedford, don't worry about it. We won't delay the order. No, trust us. We will have it right out first thing. Yes, checks in the mail. American Bob and Spool and Shuttle Company. Okay, so this is a notice of sale for the Dixfield Mill, comprising land, buildings, fixtures, machinery, tools, implements, all in running order. Of course, it was still operating, that's why it was running order. And it was sold and auctioned off on January 8th, 1896 at 11:30. Well, guess how many people showed up to buy it? 1. That's because it was all prearranged. Because who's going to come into Dixfield and upset the economic backbone of a town? Who knows how to run those mills? The people that are running them. So, and who knows how to work in those mills? The people that are working there. There's nobody that's going to come in and bid against the local people. And then Herrick and Park were the attorneys, and this was their little letterhead. Addison Herrick and Ellery Park. Ellery's parents grew up in Dixfield. And then John S. Harlow. He was disgusted, so when the 2 mills went into the ABSS, he said, We've got orders we've got to fill, so he put up another mill, and he owned it. And he used some of his father's money. His father was, when he died in 1883, is worth in today's money $7 million. And he used a lot of his money for the benefit of Dixfield. And his money today is still serving Dixfield. His daughter was Ione Harlow. She lived to be 103. On her death, she established the Ione Harlow Scholarship Fund. Let's see, 1970, almost 50 years, and every year they're sending people to college out of that fund from Dixfield. A remarkable person. So he's about 25 years old there. And there's another section of the Sanborn map in 1894 that shows the 3 mills, which is why I'm including it. This is the first mill on Mill Street, 3rd Street, and this is the mill on Mill Street, and this is the 3rd mill that was put up in 1892, the John Harlow Spool Factory. And this one burned in 1901, and John S. Harlow rebuilt it. But he didn't keep it for long. His father, E.G. Harlow, had built the Stanley Hotel. He had a house on this property before it burned, 1870, and he built this in 1879. In the meantime, he lived here. And he continued to live there. And he built this as a hotel, a dance hall, and so forth. Just a typical a wonderful community building. It was taken down in 1979 to put in a modern bank, Vanguard Savings Bank, which is leaving Dixfield this year, right now, as we talk. It's leaving town. So we sacrificed that building for a bank that was in town 40 years. And people still haven't forgotten about that. I haven't forgotten about that. Damn you guys. Anyway. And today, this is the Wiles Funeral Home in Dixfield. Beautiful building. Now, George L. Merrill has control of the mills because he bought them from John S. Harlow, who went to Boston to seal the deal. He never intended to keep them. Got them back and sold them to George L. Merrill. And George L. Merrill, about 1895 or 6, took in my great-grandfather, N.S. Stowell, as his vice president. And they gussied up their stationery a little bit. This is a nice-looking letterhead. Okay, and they were very, very successful. You had the Franco-Prussian War, you had the Spanish-American War, you had World War I, and you had other assorted wars. And whenever you have wars, you have a demand for thread and buttons and clothes and fabric, and you couldn't keep up with business. And at that time, Maine's spool mills were putting about 800 million spools a year, I think is the, yeah, no? Do I have that right? Yeah, 800 million spools a year. Yeah. So they succeeded very, very well. And then Merrill and Springer started to move into other areas. They started the Merrill and Springer Company, which is a novelty company in Dixfield, and then they started exploring in other towns. Fires were common in wood frame buildings, and most had insurance, but few had enough. Insurance companies would only insure a certain amount of the mill or certain items in the mill, so that forced owners to shop around for several vendors, each covering a different aspect of the business. This is spool mill number 2, built in 1891, had a fire. Somewhere I've got a picture of the fire department hauling hose to put this fire out, but I couldn't find it to put in the mill. And this is how it was, I put in the slideshow, this is how it was rebuilt. You can see they took out the mansard roof, or not the mansard, but the hip roof, and put in a regular roof. And I'm assuming they put in a much taller smokestack off the engine house, but they still kept the dangerous sawdust pile right next to the mill. And it looks like they had to shovel the debris over, and they had to move it somehow over into the engine room. Of course, later on, it was all done automatically by machine.